Okay. Uh, we're now live.
Oh, we're not?
We are.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm excited. Oh my goodness. So first off, I just have to thank you for allowing me to be literally the first freelance journalist to interview you about your new film, White People Money, which I thought was hilarious. One of the things that I really enjoy about your films is they're so detailed and there's so many themes going on that. But before we get into that, so I noticed your last name is Harris,
Yes.
and so is mine. So I have a theory. So
Yeah.
here are my theories. Either we're cousins, all
Uh-huh.
right? We had the same slave master, so our
Uh-huh.
families are owned by the same people,
Uh-huh.
or it's a coincidence. So I'm either leaning to the first two.
Uh-huh.
So where's your family from?
The last name Harris is from my father's side. He's from Gainesville, Florida.
Okay, the
Yeah.
last name Harris is also from my father's side,
Yeah.
but I don't know where they're from actually.
Where's your father from?
From Tacoma, Washington.
Oh, okay. Yeah. My father's from Florida, but came
Florida.
to Chicago. Came to Chicago, and yeah. So that's where my last name comes from.
I know mostly more so about my father's maternal side, the Jeffersons. I have such a large family that came from Louisiana, and then a lot of them migrated to like California, stayed in Louisiana, and then Washington, because Washington's a base city,
Uh-huh.
so military families are out there. And then yeah, I just moved out from little old Washington. Well, Washington's not little; it's a pretty big state.
Right.
But I moved from Washington and just been in Chicago now for like 5 years.
Yeah. How do you like Chicago?
Man, I love Chicago, but Chicago is different.
What you mean?
Chicago, I done grew up living in Chicago. I done got hustled. One time, this guy, my car was messed up. He flagged me down. I just took this yoga class, right?
Uh-huh.
So I'm feeling really good. My spirit's open. I'm like, God, give me a sign. And my car was damaged. And so this guy goes, hey, while I'm driving, I can fix your car. I was like, what? Oh my
Uh-huh.
goodness. You can fix my car? Fix my car. And he was like, yeah, I can do it right now. I was like, what? You can do it right now? This is awesome. Do it right now. And so I
Chicago.
was like, how much? He was like, 400. No, 250. So I said, oh, okay, 250. Awesome. What a great deal. Like the side of the car was damaged, right? Because it caved in. So I got hit and so it was caved in. So he was telling me for 250. I sound so stupid when I say what happened though. But I had just taken this yoga class, so I felt like it had to be a sign from
Uh-huh.
God. So I was like, okay. So he puts like this white cream on. We go to the bank. I pull out 250. You know, he has a kid, so I'm thinking like, oh man, he has a kid. Like this is a hard working man. All
Uh-huh.
right, cool. Got his kid out here. Then he like takes this like cream and pours this cream on my car, and then gets this little pop, right? And so long story short, I ended up going home and realized that it was damn shaving cream.
What? So did he take the dent out?
Yeah, he put shaving cream on my car, and I paid 250. And whatever tool he used did not pull out nothing. So I completely got scammed. And so
You must
in
be on the
Washington,
south side or the west side.
South Side, they're real people are real hustlers out here. I mean, Washington, you got some too, but Chicago is a different type of hustler.
Uh-huh.
You really be going for it too, like damn, like yeah, you with it. I'm like, you know,
Yeah, you gotta watch
so
out. You gotta watch out for shit. Yeah.
and then everyone when I told them, they're like, how stupid do you have to believe that someone was like gonna fix your car for 250? I was like, I just took this yoga class about bringing in miracles. So I thought this was God and it was a miracle. Normally I'm not gonna be, normally you can't get me like that, but he got me good, man. So Chicago just has taught me some lessons. Some
Chicago
expensive lessons.
make you or break you.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I've been thriving out here though, so
Yeah.
I feel really blessed, completely like transformed. So for those of the people who don't know me, I host a TV show with Dr. Wesley Muhammad, Islamic international scholar, executive council in the Nation of Islam, and I mean it's just been phenomenal. It's been a blessing. Professionally, I'm not trained as a journalist, but I've always been very inquisitive and you know, working with the show is what led me to have this interview with you. So I do think that anyone that moves to Chicago, if you're the type of person that you're like, I'm about to go out and make something happen in my life, oh, hands down, you gonna make something happen in life. If you're the type of person that's like, woe is me, I just got scammed by 250, now I'm about to hide, then Chicago, you gonna keep getting those beatings, man.
Look, look, I'm from Chicago. I remember I was in high school. I was in my senior high school, right? A guy told me, he's like, yo, come to the this car dealership with me. So I get in the car, we go to the car dealership. So we go in there, he's like, I'm gonna give you $100. I was like, okay, cool, $100. We go to the car dealership. He goes in there, he talks the guy into giving him a car.
Okay.
And like the car dealer, a used car, so he had this big old bag of this brown paper bag, as if there's a lot of money in there, right?
Uh-huh.
Well, we get the car, we driving around, we just going everywhere. I'm like, okay, so this dude leaves me in a car. I have to drive the car back to the to the car dealership. When I get to the car dealership, the police there and everything. I'm like, this dude set me up. I was like, there's never Chicago. Chicago. If you're from Chicago, you gotta watch out.
It's a different type of mentality. But once you're here for a little bit, you start being able to peep game. Another thing though is just like in Seattle and Tacoma, it's a little bit different. You really do have children out here who they're just entrepreneurs, but the conditions are real sad. And it bothers me because it's so many black children though, because you be seeing them on the sides of the street like with some talent, and, they're making money, but then you're thinking like, wow, this is an 8-year-old.
Yeah.
They're literally here all days, or the idea of begging. I really have changed my mindset because instead of when I see children on the street and they're like, oh, can you help me get some food? Instead of saying it like, oh, this child, in some ways, this child is learn helplessness and will probably, if, direction doesn't change, become homeless or stay homeless. It is really a great example of entrepreneurship because first off, a lot of adults they're not even going to tell you if they need anything. So if you've got a child out here coming on the street that's like, I'm hungry, can you help me out? That says a lot about their ability to be like, I'm about to feed myself. I see that as an entrepreneur. I see that as someone that's willing to conquer their fears, right? They just need redirection in how to actively do it in a way that doesn't demean them in the process, because most people, you look at that and you're like, oh, that's so sad. You don't really look at it from the lens of, oh, that's a young entrepreneur and they're already asking, they're already putting in the ask for something. Yeah. So
that's a great way to look at it.
Yeah. And it's kind of, I feel like in some ways it ties in with your movie in terms of just the mentality, right? Because it's like you see a lot of black children in Chicago that are doing this. So it's like this black money doesn't really, I guess, exist, but white people money, because we're not seeing white children at the level of black children on the streets doing this. So kind of goes into this white people money and how can we get our hands on it?
Exactly.
How did you come up with the name for that?
You know what? I don't remember how I came up with the name. I think I don't know where was I at. I don't know what was going on, but just the idea that the name just popped up. But I just don't remember where the name came from. It just popped up like.
Have you had a lot of pushback with a name like that?
No, absolutely none.
Okay.
Which is interesting. None at all.
Well, because it exists. Do you ever watch Hoarders?
Say it again.
I said because it exists, and then I asked, do you ever watch Hoarders?
No, I haven't.
Okay, you gotta watch Hoarders. Right. So I was watching Hoarders last night, and Hoarders is real interesting because one's a mental condition. But what's interesting about Hoarders is you see a lot of white people on there who don't have a job, and they're living in some big old houses. And it's like they've hoarded the whole house, but I was like, man, where are they getting this money from? And so I was with my fiance, and I was like, man, where is this lady getting this money from? And he was like, that's white people money.
That's
And
white
I just
people
started
money.
laughing
Yeah,
because I was like, oh, that's the name of Mark Harris's
yeah.
film. So obviously, in our conversations, we acknowledge
Oh
that
yeah.
this idea of white people money really exists, and we're excluded from it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's a term that is often used when I gotta get that. I gotta make that white people money. So it's a term. It's definitely a term that's often used. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then so if we walk through it a little bit, it starts with Kareem and Nora. They're a couple. They're married. So the woman, Nora, is played by Drew Sidora. And then you also always have like phenomenal actors in there. Like, okay, for someone who as an we have to have another show just about how as an independent filmmaker you've been able to just work with different levels of celebrities throughout your stages, because even in Black Coffee you have so many different individuals that are recognizable now. And then also in it you've got Kareem was played by Barden. How do you pronounce Barden's last name?
Fitzpatrick.
Fitzpatrick, yeah, Barden Fitzpatrick. So they start off with him entering into a sweepstake.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because there's a segment in it where Nora's like, Black people always entering in stuff in sweepstakes thinking they're gonna win. And the funny part is, remember Willie Johnson? He just had this campaign of giving $1 million away.
Willie Johnson from Chicago.
Yes.
Oh, Willie. Oh, Willie. Was it Willie Johnson or Willie Wilson?
Wilson, was it? I think it's Willie Wilson, actually. Let me look. Yeah, he ran for president.
Yeah, Willie Wilson.
Senator. Yeah, Willie Wilson, not Willie Johnson.
Yeah.
Okay, so that part I thought was really funny because the day that I got to watch the video is also the same day that I had signed up for that, and I was like, man, I signed up within 30 minutes. I'm about to be one of those people who's about to get this money. I still haven't heard from it, but I really like your ability to show our behaviors. Like most Black people who watch this movie, they're going to see themselves in different scenarios in that. Because I was like, dang, that's so. I just signed up. I give all my information. They needed your address. They needed your address. They needed all this. I was sending it out to other people. Like, you better get your money. And I think that was like a month ago. I still haven't.
Because we're giving our information for the money.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, all right. So how did you go about thinking how to put these pieces together?
So normally what I do is I come up with a concept, and I was like, what if, because I was like, what if Mackenzie Bezos, which is Jeff Bezos' ex-wife, and this was the time that they were going through a divorce, and she walked away with like, I think 134, like not for like $50-some billion. And like, so what if she, and then they were saying that she's going to give some of that money away to charity. So I was like, concept. I was like, okay. And I used that concept to just, make a movie about it. So I was like, so I just started to put all the pieces together in terms of, okay, the concept, I did an outline, and I just came up with these different characters and said, okay, let's make it happen. And then I started writing it. And then it's just all started to come out.
Well, speaking of Jeff Bezos, I thought that part was pretty significant where Kareem asks Nora, do you know who Jeff Bezos is? And she's like, who?
Yeah.
I ain't cheating on you. And then he goes, but you know who Cardi B is? She was like, of course I know Cardi. And I think that's a really great example of Black consciousness and what we actually tune into. So let's talk about that from your perspective as a filmmaker.
Okay, so exactly what you just said is that sometimes who, when it comes in terms of money, right? We don't study money. Sometimes what we do, we study celebrity. So even though Cardi B has money to a certain degree, but she doesn't have that true white people money like Jeff Bezos. So what I wanted to show is the fact that, okay, we know who this woman is. We know who Cardi B is, you know what I'm saying? But We do not know who Jeff Bezos is because we don't study economics. We don't study money. So that was basically the symbolism in that particular saying.
Yeah, I thought that was really significant because it's also even think about, like, for instance, in Chicago, the Pritzker's family. A lot of people actually don't know the Pritzker's family, regardless that JB, is our governor, and Penny Pritzker was just named one of the 50 most powerful women in Chicago. But even outside of that, their name is literally everywhere. You can go down to University of Chicago, and you've got the Pritzker School, right? You go downtown in Millennium Park, and there is the Pritzker Field. So we've got people who are billionaires, who have all this money, and unless you understand who, like the Rockefeller family, unless you understand who these families are, you're more likely, especially in the Black community, to know who Cardi B is. And there's no shade against Cardi B, but that's not an example actually of wealth. She's rich, but that's not wealth.
It's not the Pritzker's money.
You said what?
It's not the Pritzker's money.
Yeah. Imagine being labeled a philanthropist and everyone just loving you because you have all this money, and it's like, man, you're so powerful because you do great works, and it's like, oh, of course, yeah.
Oh, she has a sister as well, who's her name is Gigi Pritzker, who's also actually a movie producer, and she's very, very, very successful as a movie producer, and she's a billionaire as well, and she uses her own money to produce these movies.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
that's amazing. So, but in that segment too, or in that scene also too, Kareem responds to Nora that, how am I going to be able to get rich with you or build wealth with you when you don't even know? So it sounds like in order for us as couples, because I thought the movie did a really great job of just looking at the dynamics between Black men and Black women and what it really looks like for us to partner and for us to either uplift our partners or be in submission with our partners, whatever that's going to look like. But when it comes around money, there's this distrust, and it really was repetitive in the movie where it's like they don't really trust each other at all. But they've married each other, which is crazy. But now money's involved, and it's like, why did they get married? Why did you make the dynamic like that?
I really, in truth, I think they do trust one another.
Okay.
Yeah, they definitely trust one another. But what I wanted to do is, because remember the saying when they go and they're talking and they're having a conversation, and they have like this fantasy. They pop into this fantasy.
Yeah.
Was
so that where she wanted to be with a different man, though?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So they pop into that fantasy. So a lot of things, even though they trust one another and they love one another, and but a lot of stuff was playing on like with our subconscious, in their subconscious mind as well. So we know that what they were going through in the relationship that they had, there was this trust there, right? There was this trust there because they, if you look at their relationship, they were cracking on one another, and they were like cracking jokes on one another, making fun on one another. But at the end of the day, there was still this bond. There's still this unity that the two of them had. But a lot of that distrust, and even though it was coming from like the subconscious mind of their subconscious mind.
Yeah. That okay. All right. I like how you explain that. So that makes a lot of sense. So when we think about money in our relationships, how should Black couples be thinking about it?
Well, it's wealth building, just like when, even in the movie, right? So the first thing that they did was they were like, okay, we're going to go and buy this big mansion, and they pull up with their glasses, they blink, you know what I'm saying? When they get out, this whole situation happens, and what happens actually forces them back into their community. And then, forces them back into their community. And once they go into their community, certain things start to happen. When those things start to happen, they figure out, okay, look, this is what we need to do. We need to, we need to use our money in order to start building up our community. And you notice she said, well, we can't let people know what we're doing because
Yeah.
yeah.
Which, when we think of like jealousy and envy in our communities, we see that Daryl. So Daryl is Kareem's brother.
His brother.
And there seems to be, was it jealousy, competition? How would you label their dynamic?
It was so Daryl is an opportunist.
Okay.
He's an opportunist. Everything about him, everything, like when he goes to, he's married to a white woman, right? So when they go over,
I thought she was Latina.
No,
I was so confused when I was like, she's white. If I saw her in real life, I wouldn't have thought she was a white woman.
She and I, we go back and forth all the time. I've been knowing her for a long time, and I was like, you got some, you're not just all white, but she says she is. I don't know.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Well, you gotta let her know. When I watched that film, I was like, how is she playing a white woman?
Yeah. I know she's I believe she's Italian.
Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. And so when they go to the house, his brother is more like an opportunist. It's like that's his thing. So every decision that he's made in his, not every decision, but the decision that he make in his life is all about bettering him or trying to get something out of somebody. So even when he calls up his wife and say, "Okay, I need you to do this with soul food and stuff like that," it's all about an opportunity that he can take advantage of.
Oh, that makes total sense, because at first I couldn't understand Daryl's dynamic with what was the guy that worked for him? What was his name again?
Peter.
Yeah, I didn't understand that, but now that I see him as an opportunist, that makes sense, because he represented the white man who was an opportunist, who wrote him up and was like, hey, he had 35. How many missed? 35, I think, missed times that Kareem was late in the movie, and Kareem was like, "There's not even that many days in the month."
Yeah,
I was triggered on that part because, again, like I said, one of the things that was so funny about this movie is how relatable it is to a lot of our experiences, right? So a lot of Black individuals, we've talked about amongst ourselves how we've been discriminated in the workforce. So I used to be a crisis counselor before I did doing the TV show with Dr. Wesley. Shout out to Dr. Wesley and the MAP team, by the way. And one of the last straws when I was a crisis counselor is I worked overnight. So I worked in a lot of different hospitals in Chicago. And when you work overnight, you're usually in the system that I was working in, it's just by yourself. And so one day I come in and I noticed that there's another person there. So I called, so I was like, oh, I don't want to work, So I called and I was like, hey, there's two of us here. Can I go home? Old girl, long story short, says I can go home. Next thing I know, she writes me up and says that we had the conversation on a day that didn't even exist on the calendar year.
What?
And I was like, when I saw that part in the scene, it was just like, sometimes our employers must just think we're stupid. You've got 35 days that he's late when there's not 35 days in the month. You're telling me that me and you had a conversation on a day that doesn't exist. It did not exist, but we had this conversation. And there's an email, but the email somehow is gone from both of our ends. So, when I was watching it, I actually was triggered a little bit, and I had to, relax and be like, it's not happening right now. It's not you.
So that was done purposely, because definitely done purposely to give him more days to have him written up for being late, more days than we actually have in an entire month. Yeah.
So then in that part though, he's not even really able to defend himself because he was habitually. So why did you write it to be like that as well?
With that particular scene, right? What I wanted to show is, again, like something similar as far as your situation, whereas people can say things happen and that really didn't happen.
Yeah.
And even with his brother, right? Even with his brother, he tells his brother, look, I wrote him up. He's been late 35 times. And his brother just took that for face value. he didn't even question it and said 35. You notice he said 35 times. He didn't even. And this is man is a business owner, but he didn't put two to two together. So he just took Peter's word on face value and charged his brother with being late 35 times, where there's not even 35 days in the month. He's like, well, there's not even 35 days in a month. It's something that we do. We take, even like when it comes to the media, we take the media information coming from the media. We take that stuff on face value. We don't even question it, And right, so that's what we wanted to show. There is the fact that this is your brother. You didn't even question. As far as it was just a lie so blatant that you didn't even question it. You just took it on face value, and it's a complete lie.
Yeah,
so
that's why I was tricked. It was my situation. I was like, they were like, "Do you remember this conversation?" No, I do not remember a conversation that didn't exist.
Right?
Do you? Another good thing or an interesting aspect of this movie is how race is transcended. So you've got a character who's so ambiguous and his identity keeps changing. And in each time his identity changes, I believe that he could have been that race. So what character do you think I'm talking about?
His identity changes. That's a good question. You're talking about Jermaine.
Yes. Yes. Yes, Jermaine. At first I thought he was Indian, and then I thought he was Mexican, and then I was like, well, I don't even know what he is, because now they're saying, is he half white, half black? I don't really know Jermaine's identity, but that his character really also shows you the way in which we can be biased, and the ways in which, as Black individuals, we'll be quick to want to call people out for any type of racism that we're experiencing, while also dishing it out. And it was pretty repeated with his character, and it was also like really funny too, because he was like, well, we think you all, when was it Nora or Kareem was like, well, we think you all work in gas stations, and I was like, dang.
Yeah.
I felt bad for laughing. I was like, oh my gosh, should I not laugh at this part? Because it's like, if I ask people, where do you think he would work? It actually, most people, unfortunately, some might say a doctor, right? Because we tend to think that like they're going to be a doctor. But if you say a gas station, you'd be like, I can see it.
Then they accused him of being a Muslim.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So let's explain more of his character and how he fit in it.
So, everything what you're saying, what I wanted to do with that character was show how when it comes to even Hollywood, that's why at one moment he would have this exaggerated Middle Eastern voice, then he would go back to speaking English, then he would go back, he would go in and out. Then the Marina, So the Marina Donna character, and it would make it clear, like this is, when she said talk about the eyeliner, and when she talked when he speaks, she was like, well, he's wearing his eyeliner because this is how Hollywood portrays most Middle Easterners. You know what I'm saying? So you said, well, I'm sorry.
I said I felt Aladdin when she said that part.
Yeah. And so what we wanted to do with that is show you the racism, that not just in us, but the racism that comes in Hollywood as it relates to how they treat Middle Easterners or people from, the Indian community, because they're like you just said, you didn't know whether he was Indian, whether he was Arab, whether he was Pakistani, you don't know. But then he had this black name, and and it was like, okay, what is this guy? So I wanted that character to. He's a combination of different characters of how Hollywood portrays different characters, who are not white.
And his girlfriend, was she Latina?
She's Puerto Rican, yes.
Puerto Rican, yeah. So they seem like they were in a complicated interracial relationship.
It's 5 o'clock.
That's really significant of how he was going to utilize the money, right? So for those who don't know, like they're trying to steal the couple's money. I don't want to give too much away because you have to watch this movie. This is one of the best movies to watch right now, especially for Black America. We really need to be thinking of different ways to make money, and this quarantine really exemplifies that we need to think about how we're going to build wealth. A lot of people are out of jobs right now,
Yeah.
and a lot of people are essential workers without hazard pay. So we should be brainstorming, and I think this movie is very timely for that reason. But to get to the point, there's he says to Kareem and Nora that Black people we don't support each other, right? And how he knows what he's gonna do with this money. He's gonna help his community, and then he goes into this detailed vision of it, and that actually does play out because the world really does see that. Unfortunately, that Black people, they view us as selfish individuals. That, if I have $5 and you're hungry and only asking for $1, I'm not going to do it at all, but I'll go give my money to the hair supply store or something that's not going to go back into my community. And so that was really significant because you showed it what it looks like, and they didn't really want to accept it. But in the beginning, the first thing that they said when they got this money is, we got to move because, Black people always want a handout. So explain your thought processes on that, and what should the viewer get from this?
Well, so when it comes to the Jermaine character, he tells the Nora, and this is after they come back from the big match, and he tells them, like, look, black people don't know what to do with this type of money. And he says, as soon as you all get paid, first thing you all do is abandon the community and move to the suburb. He said, I know what to do with it. I'm going to help my people out. You know what I'm saying? And so basically, I think for that that's just self-explanatory. Is the fact that what we do as Black people is that most of us, when we do get to a certain level, we do abandon our community, right? But when it comes to other people, they do help their community out. They don't go trying to run into other people's community or invade other people's community. They more so build up where they're from. And so, like, when he said he's from Afghanistan, and the guy was like, well, you can go buy that for $9.99. So even though he said America destroyed it, even though it's destroyed and the value of it went down because of, of course, the bombs that's dropped. But he said, hey, look, I'm just take this money and I'm going to take it to Afghanistan and I'm going to build it up. A nation that was destroyed by, and so that's what I want to show is that if he can if he's concerned about building up a nation, then why not? How come we're not concerned about building up a block or a community? So that's what we want to show with in that as it relates to Jermaine and Marina and the couples.
It seems though, for the most part, that specifically African Americans, because you have a lot of African immigrants who actually have that same mindset where they're going to send funds back to the country. But with African Americans, we do tend to not reinvest in our communities. There's obviously a lot of us that do, but the majority of us don't. It reminds me of a time where I used to run a sushi restaurant, and I used to run a sushi restaurant.
Oh, okay.
And, I was working with a Thai woman, and we were a startup company, phenomenal sushi. It was a really great experience, but we tanked, right? And while we were tanking, we didn't have money to fund the sushi restaurant. And what happened is, and I've never witnessed anything like this, other Thai people who were not affiliated with the restaurant, right, but just by being Thai themselves, began to fund us. Crazy. And so I asked her, I said, well, what are they going to get out of it? And she was like, what do you mean? I was like, well, they're giving us fish so we can run. They're sending us workers. So sushi restaurants were sending us workers at a time where we just it was just really me and her. And so, like, we didn't have much of a team, and it is very hard to run a sushi restaurant with two people. All right. It's just,
it was it here in Chicago
it was here in Chicago. Yeah. We tanked and it got closed down, but it was in the food hall, the Revival Food Hall on 125 5th South Clark. But what she said to me, I'll never forget, is she was like, well, we're Thai. And I was like, okay. She was like, well, we're Thai, so we look out for each other. And she was like, I don't know, do black people do that? And she didn't mean in a disrespectful way, but she was like, you guys don't do that, huh? She was like, they're going to help me out because when I'm good, they know I'm going to help them out. And ever since and she's from Thailand, right? And so that really I'll never forget that experience because, I mean, we would have tanked even sooner had not the other Thai individuals poured into business to try to save it. And so it's like, when I saw that part, again, like I said, this movie, most people who watch this movie, they're going to have multiple experiences that they're going to be like, oh, I had this experience. Or I've overheard someone say that black people, we don't invest in each other. We don't trust each other, or you know what I'm saying? So what conditions do you think are happening that have us to have a mindset, specifically African Americans, where we are less inclined to help each other and their business out?
I want to say, well, you know what? I want to say it's the residue of slavery, but I don't know if we can actually make that statement. And here's the reason why: because directly after slavery, right, you had black people who actually pulled our resources together, and we had over 60 black towns in different throughout America, right? And then you had like the Black Wall Street, Rosewood, different communities who were actually doing what we're saying, what we're talking about now. So, but this is directly after slavery. So I don't know if we can just say it's the residue of slavery, because I mean it has to be the residue of probably like the civil rights movement, meaning that right up during the civil rights movement, that's when when you had the destruction of the black community, whereas the businesses, the hotels, the theaters, the buses, everything started to shut down because again, when we were allowed to live in the white community, we abandoned the black community. And once we started to abandon the black community, everything started to shut down. So I think this is where we at now. It has to be a residue of the civil rights movement and not the residue of actual slavery. And I think we got to the point because whereas we wanted to fight for integration so much, and the children now, like we're the byproduct of our parents fighting for integration. You know what I'm saying? And so, but now I think it's changing now. And when I say that it's changing now, so when I went to Sean Michelle's, right? Sean Michelle's, the ice cream. Yeah. So you see Sip and Savior, they do, they all working together. Sip and Savior, Sean Michelle's, Berries and Berry. So I go to Sean Michelle's, and you go get some ice cream. On set up next to the ice cream is a sort of like a little restaurant with Berries and Berry. These are all black owned spots who are pulling their resources together to keep it afloat. You know what I'm saying? So I think we're getting back around to doing back around to those days directly after slavery. And this is happening not just in Chicago. This is happening, throughout like Atlanta, DC. This is happening throughout the country, that we're becoming more conscious. And I saw a post the other day. A young lady post. She said, "Why is it so hard for? I've been trying to get in contact with a black-owned business. Why is it so hard for them to respond?" And so you're gonna have these comments and stuff like that. Where I've been doing the same thing, but that's a good sign, though. That's a good sign. A good sign meaning that more black people are reaching out to more black-owned business to do business. So I don't look at it. I know sometimes we look at it and say, okay, why are we trying to knock the black-owned business? But it's the fact that we see that this is we're shopping more. We're trying to shop more black. I don't even go to Starbucks.
Oh, okay.
I don't even go to. I mean, I go Sip and Savior. I have to go Sip and Savior. That's the place.
Yeah, well, that reminds me. In the movie, you talk about our spending power.
Yeah.
Right? So spending power is about 1.2 trillion.
Yeah.
Right, and you say that we could be ranked, just African Americans, as our own country based off of how much money we spend. So is that an example of you redirecting your dollar back into our community? Would you say that? Absolutely.
And it came out of his brother's mouth. So his brother wasn't a complete fool. He knew, because he was an opportunist. So these are some of the things that he studied. His furniture stores in the hood. The guy who works for him, is a white guy. There's a reason for that. You know, is a manager. You know, so when he's talking to his brother, he's like, "This is how much we spend as black people," and he's like, "You mean to tell me they gave a Negro like you all of this money without an education on how to use it? This to our athletes and our entertainers who get all of this money, but not the knowledge of how to use it." You know what I'm saying? So his brother was basically telling him these things.
Which is interesting because we could really look at Daryl's character as I guess you could say he's an Uncle Tom, but really my understanding on watching it shows the ways in which sometimes black people, we will develop strategic relationships with white people for an advantage and exclude each other out and overwork each other. So it's like, I don't know if he really loves Don's character or he believes that his access in marriage and matrimony with a white woman financially boosts him and gives him more credibility. And then you have his relationship with Peter, where Peter is disrespectful to daddy. You know, like you paid him, you know, to disrespect you in a way, but I saw that as a way of like, sometimes we will take a relationship with a white person and it's not a genuine relationship. It's a relationship where in some ways we are below them, but to other people we've elevated in a way that, I don't know, it doesn't really give us respect, because I don't think Kareem really respects his brother. He respects that his brother pays him or did pay him. But I thought that was that kind of like what you were going for, to tell that side of it?
Yeah, but as a matter of fact, his brother is very clear on why he married his wife. Remember when they were in the kitchen, and he said, he was like, the audience is going to be very mad at me. He said, and he tells his brother, get rid of Shaniqua and get you a mountaintop. You know what I'm saying? So he was telling him, get rid of the black woman and get you a white woman, because you know you need a white woman in this you know, in order to be elevated when it comes to success. Well, he tells him that in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. He does say that, and which is interesting because that triggers a lot of black women's fears that, you know, if I get with this man while he's broke, he's gonna get a when he get rich.
Yeah.
Has anyone else seen it to where you've gotten any feedback from those that part?
Oh, we screened it out in LA. And
okay, so how did that go?
It went great. It was, as a matter of fact, one of the actresses is actually watching. If you would like to bring her in, ask her some questions. She's actually watching. Let me see.
Which actress?
Jen. She's watching.
Hey,
Jen. Also, and you notice, like with the Daryl character, he was so exaggerated as a black man. You know, he was so everything was an exaggeration.
Well, I actually like the exaggerations of. So this is why, and you can tell me why you did this, but I thought the reason why you had the exaggerated parts is so that people could be critical and like, do we really act like this, and really think like, are these behaviors serving our ultimate goal, right? So most black people, I'd say people, period, what do they want out of life? They want a good life. They want to be loved, and they want respect, right? So you want to feel important, you want to feel respected, and you want to be loved. And so I thought that like the exaggerated parts of the acting was intentional to show us, well, here's the ugly truth of how the world sees us. And also a lot of these behaviors, some of these behaviors, this is how we act.
Right.
Is Jen joining us?
No, she said she's getting ready because she and I do a 6 o'clock show. So she said she's getting ready for the 6 o'clock show.
Oh, okay. So what was she saying? Because I can't see any of the comments now.
No, I just sent her a text.
Oh.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so.
Oh, that's what she said, like hood famous or black famous. She did comment.
Oh, what'd she say?
She made a comment on the Instagram, but but I just sent her a text. But she said she's now getting ready for the so she was watching, but she's getting ready for the 6 o'clock show that we do.
Oh, and you've been doing these all the time. I've been tuning in. I'm like, they're really good conversation. They're needed conversations, and they're really good.
Thank you.
So, how has the quarantine impacted white people money and debuting it?
Oh, big.
Obviously.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Here's the thing. The thing is, unfortunately, but I think it's an unfortunate situation. But for us, it's going to be a blessing. And here's why I'm saying that. Because before this whole quarantine, right, you had all of these big blockbuster Hollywood movies coming out. And if we had released our film then in terms of in the theaters, right, we'd have been drowned out by these big Hollywood blockbuster movies. But since what's going on, I'm talking to, but Studio Movie Grill is going to do a release of the film in like 9 cities. And we may even get more now. And we may get way more than just the 9 cities. So they're going to release it. And then once they release the film, you know, it's going to play opposite of the different classics and stuff like that. So people once they go to it, they're going to have an option whether to see a classic or to see this film right here. So, you know, hopefully, you know, this will be their choice. Their choice.
Oh, I think Black America has to get behind this movie. Yeah. You know, it's so layered. You know, you could literally write an entire essay on the different themes and the psychology of Black consciousness and what it looks like in, you know, 2020. The fact that our spending power is 1.2 trillion, yet so many of us are living below the poverty line, right? And there's a lot of people are like, well, I'm doing really well in life. Yeah, but that's exceptionalism. That's actually not the norm. It's broadcasted like the norm, but it's not the norm. Many of us are barely making it. Even right now, when you think of who are these essential workers, what do they look like?
Black and Latinos. You go throughout there. Yeah.
And there's no hazard pay. People are literally putting their entire families at risk. And granted, now you have this whole thing where it's like, I'm an essential worker. And it goes back to how I think your movie really shows our need to want to feel important, right? Because it's like, that gives people, oh, I have to go to work. I'm an essential worker. So there's a gratifying thought psychology behind that of I'm valuable, I'm feeling important, but the pay does not reflect
absolutely
the value.
Yes.
So is the risk worth it? So for me, it's like, this is like the perfect time to go watch a movie, because I think at this point, Black minds they're forced to be receptive, because a lot of this can't leave our houses. And if we are leaving our houses, you know, we're essential workers, and we're realizing that like my pay didn't increase.
Right. So to your point as well, like even in the film, right, you had Kareem's character. And you know he didn't. You know he had no desire at all to go to work on time, anything. You know, but it's only when he got the money at the very end, he's like, okay, I'm going to get up on time. I'm going to work on time. And when he decided, okay, this is what I'm going to discipline myself and to get to work on time. You know, and so I think what we want to show there is, you know, you could take a man like I don't believe there's no such thing as a lazy man. It's just the person of the fact that you put the right, if a man or a woman find their vision and their purpose, they're going to actually get up and be motivated. You know, it's just a matter of finding what we want to do in life. So I never believe that there are lazy people in the world at all. Yeah.
Well, speaking of that scene, he also talks about how he willed it into existence, even making this much money. And wasn't it before he won that he was boxing and he was like working out? So he was literally disciplining and conditioning his mind to be like, you know what, I'm about to make us some billionaires. We're about to get rich. Yeah. And so I think that showed really the example of our ability that when we condition our minds, we train our minds, and then we actually have like physical action. Not saying that if you go work out, but I felt like that bag was a metaphor for like actual
alert from
like showing up and,
more space.
I'm sorry.
Wait, what?
No, my computer. Oh yeah.
No, Yeah, so he's showing up. You know what I'm saying? Like he's showing up. He's in the game, and then he willed into existence not only a better future for himself, but for his wife too. Was that also like a part of what you were trying to accomplish?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I don't think he just willed it because initially she was against it, right? But only when remember, like only when she said, "Oh, I see your vision now. I see what you're trying to do." When they were boxing in what's the name? Only when she accepted it, only when she backed him is when it came into an existence. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So
your films are so layered. Like, this is such a comical layered film because I didn't because even physically she grabbed the bag and she's holding it. What? Oh, that was great.
Yeah, and then and they took the when he was like, okay, we're gonna take it and we're gonna throw it, and they took the whole idea and they threw it, and you heard the everything shatters and stuff like that.
Yeah, that was like Qigong or Chai Qi. I'm mispronouncing it, but the ancient Chinese where you Qigong. Are you familiar with that? Where it's
I think it was in Kung Fu Hustler.
But the practice I think is called Qigong, where it's like QUGONG, and you start practicing feeling energy. So like how my hands are being held, and so you imagine that there's this energy field right there, which there literally is this energy field, and then because you start paying attention to it, like even right now physically I can feel that there's energy in this space because I'm being conscious of it. I felt like that scene was that when, even though right now my eyes can't see it, right? Your eyes can't see anything between it. In reality, there's so much happening right now in between my hands of this energy. And similar in the movie, like right now, when they were doing it, you physically couldn't see it, but in that they were actually manifesting the reality of what their vision was. And then they threw it out there, and it came back and found them.
Yeah, let me just say this. This is an example of when everybody is on the same page mentally. That right there are the two actors doing. That's not scripted at all. That's not scripted at all. So when they do this and they toss it, that's all the act. There are a lot of things Aaron was doing, and a lot of things that they were doing because we were all like, and a lot of things that the robbers, a lot of stuff. The robbers did something. There was something happened. Oh, remember the scene when they had the couple on the couch and the robbers looking to the camera and it's like, "Hi, mom. Hey, that's not scripted. That's them doing that."
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I was like, and I had to go back to the screenplay. I was like, did I write that? Then I had asked Harsh and Jen. I was like, wait a minute, did you all just do that? And it was like, yeah, we just did it. I was like, what made you all do it? It's like it just felt right at the time. But that is not scripted at all.
Wow.
Yeah.
It all comes together in a way that I thought every part of it actually was scripted that way. Yeah. How do you go about creating such intentional energy to where your actors are able to create these parts that aren't scripted, but you wouldn't even know?
Because you got using just because I really wanted these actors, because when you looking at the only character that was actually when I was writing the screenplay that I knew I wanted, that I actually got was and I'm glad we came up, we got the actors that we want, that we had, was the Aaron's character who played Daryl. When I was writing that character, I was writing that character for him.
Okay.
Yeah, Peter, I was writing that character for him, and then Marina Donald, I was writing that character for Jenny. So I knew that I wanted. I worked with the two guys before, and I was initially going to have Jen to play in Black and Privilege, but it didn't work out. So I wrote that character. I wrote those characters for them, but everybody else is like, when we sat down, it's just like it all came together. Everything came together.
Yeah, you've produced many movies, but within what was it 2019 that you released Black and
Yeah,
Privilege?
yeah, it was 20 last year.
Man, you're just yeah, it was this year too?
No, last year, 2019.
Yeah. You're just back to back because it hasn't even been a full year and you're already like you're in movie theaters with the next one. How are you doing this at such a high level?
Well, it's just a matter of sitting down, you know, and writing it, getting it done. And so once it's done, it just say, okay, how am I going to get this made? You know, and just I send it out to the different actors and you know who I want. Like when I sent it out to Aaron, he was like the first person I sent it out to, and because I worked with him on a film called Stock Options. And we talked about the character. And I was like, okay. Then I started to build around him. You know, I just sent it. I think then I sent it to Tommy Courts, who played Peter. Then I sent it to Jan. And then initially, and I'm sure the actors wouldn't mind me saying this, but initially the lead character was written for Corey Hendricks. And,
really?
Yeah, I love Corey.
Caching.
Corey, I love him to death. But I'm very excited that but Corey had to do. He was started to film Fargo, so he couldn't do this film. You know, and so I'm glad that Bart came on to do it. You know, do the project. You know, Bart was absolutely amazing.
You know, it's crazy because you know I like Corey Hendricks, but after seeing the movie, I can't see Kareem as no one other than Bart.
Right.
So now it's just like I can't see Corey in that role, but because I think Bart owned it.
He owned it.
You know, like he owned it so well, and he gave such a great range. You were with him. You know, I was mad that he got lied on. I was excited. He was like visioning the future. And when he was like, I'm about to win this money, I was like, yes, you are. Like, he really had such a high charisma to him that it was easy to believe that this was his life.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, he was amazing. He was amazing. Yeah, and he was amazing to work with. He was absolutely amazing to work with. Yeah.
Yeah. It seems like your whole cast was amazing to work with.
Oh yeah.
That you're even with Black and Privilege, you had a lot of awesome cast members, and the synergy just seems to just be natural with all of them.
Yeah, I like these last two projects. I have to. I'm glad I went back to the way I normally would make movies, meaning that we don't have a lot of money to make these movies, but I have more control. In terms of who I put in the movies, and you know, so we're able to put like I had an absolutely amazing time directing White People's Money and Black and Privilege. You know, I have good times I have good times when other films, like, you know, especially directing Black Coffee. Stock Option was one of the best experiences to this day that I've ever had. You know, but there are movies like, you know, that I've directed. I'm like, I can't wait till this is over. But my last two, which is Black Coffee, which is Black and Privilege and White People's Money, I had an amazing time directing these projects.
So you seem to be very focused around race. What is it about race that has you so intrigued where you're writing these great movies about it?
About race?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think that if you look at my movies, and even when we deal with race, I think that everybody can sit down and laugh at themselves. You know, like then I don't write with the intentions of trying to. I write the truth, but I don't write with the intentions of trying to offend anyone. You know, so like when you see, I just write reality. So when you see the Peter character, right? Even though you like Peter is something else, but you like Peter. You know what I'm saying? Like, this dude is crazy, but he's funny. You know, like even with Black Coffee with the white guy who fired Darren Henson. You know, it's like, okay, you take the man's job, you fire him, but you don't hate the character. So I'm not trying to portray these. Even when you're looking at when you go to Black and Privilege, right? And you go to the, you know, Jermaine, he was the restaurant owner in Black and Privilege. So,
oh my goodness!
Yeah.
Wow! I didn't even catch that. Yeah, he was.
And so even when you go back and look at his characters, the fact that the way I wanted his character to be portrayed, is I didn't want people to hate him. I want people to just try to understand him. I want people to see, okay, this dude is crazy, but that's why we put like that comedic element to it. So that's what we're trying to do. I'm not trying to we deal with social issues, but I'm not trying to draw out this trauma or these unwanted emotions out of Black people. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think as a filmmaker, you're like one of the only ones that really truly explore or even mention the dynamics between Black people and like Arabs. Because Black and Privilege, shows that dynamic. Because we're actually really related in the sense that
Absolutely.
There are a lot of gas stations and like hair supply stores where Arabs typically don't live in our neighborhoods, but they control a lot of our neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. So there is this relationship that we're constantly having, and like you're like one of the only film directors where I actually get to see it in terms of where it's explicit. Like mm-hmm. this is what actually happens in our communities, and these conversations, even as ugly as they are, they happen, they occur, and that's exactly what they look like with the insults going back and forth. But because in Black and Privilege, it was more so we need to take back ownership. And then in White People Money, it was more so showing the ways in which we have our own biases of who these people are and how we portray them in our minds, as well as how the movie industry portrays them.
Yes.
What about that dynamic makes you keep writing about it?
Because I think it's something that we don't touch on, and again, let me just make it. I mean, I know there's this beef between, when it comes to the Arab community and the Black community because of this dynamic, right? But I absolutely love my Arab brothers and sisters, like completely, and so, but at the same time, in this love, I try to definitely deal with real issues. The real issues is the fact that, we can't come into a community and take advantage of the community and not think that the community is not going to respond. Eventually, people going to get tired, and so it's just like a warning to say, like, just if you come into the community, treat people with respect, at least treat people with respect. And if you can't do that, not everyone is going to feel like we feel. Not everyone is going to have the level of consciousness that we have, and people get tired, and so it's just like, so it's like knocking on the door and just wanting our people, our Arab brothers and sisters, and say, like, it's, we have to say at one point enough is enough, so that's what I'm trying to do with the films that I make, in particular with Black and Privilege.
Yeah, it's really interesting because it's like Black people, we've called out white people, like that happens. That's normal, right? Yeah. We've discussed the ways in which Koreans and Chinese and Asians in general have, what it looks like to have a relationship with them. Somewhat Indians, not really, but with Arabs, not at all. And I never even realized that until I watched both of your films. I'm like, because it happens just the way that it's displayed, but it's not a larger conversation. And they're probably like one of the last groups that if we were publicly going to have a discourse on it, we're even going to mention. So I'm like, what is it about Arabs and our relationship with Black people where these occurrences are happening between us, but they're also like one of the least likely groups that we're going to have a discourse about what it looks like for us to work together in our own community, in a Black-owned community, or a Black rented community.
Like, definitely rented. Definitely rented. And that's a good question. I really don't have an answer to that question right now. That is really, I mean, I haven't even thought about it fully, as far as like, why don't we actually, like, we don't have this same dynamics as far as with the Arab community as we, do with other communities.
No. But we do, but we don't talk about it. We
don't talk about it.
That's why. That's one of the why you're literally one of my favorite just film producers, directors, just because when I watch your stuff, I'm always thinking, so I get excited about your films because I'm like, I try to figure out what can I catch? Because Because I'm like, he's gonna put something in there. Can I catch it? And can I be on point to the direction that he's trying to get me to catch it? You know, versus just watching something that's super entertaining, but it didn't critically challenge me and how I show up in the world. And I think your films are really good, especially with white people money right now, specifically of how we show up in the world as Black people. How are we spending our money, right? How many reports of the Nelson Report do we have to know that we've got, you know, 1.2 in spending power, but yet our communities are mostly rented? That makes no sense when you really think about it. Like, shouldn't we have higher ownership? Which in some ways we do, but ownership not in terms of like property.
You said ownership in not terms of what kind of
like
ownership?
Property, like owning like land, owning.
We need to own land. I mean, that's very important.
Yeah.
So just to let you know, like once we do Black Coffee 2 is basically about owning land.
Oh really?
Oh yeah, it's absolutely about owning land. It's basically about.
When are you doing this?
Fire,
Mark.
Yeah. Hopefully we're gonna do something this year. But again, like that one is going to be on a very very biggest budget scale, and but it's about land ownership.
Have you started casting for that?
Well, have you seen Black Coffee, the first one, right? Have you seen the first? Okay, so we're going to go with the same actors for the that was in the first one. Yeah, but we're gonna add more actors around that as well.
Oh, okay. So do you get flooded with inboxes of people all trying to get in your movies now?
Yeah, but do you
respond to people?
Sometimes I do. It depends. Like sometimes, but I there was a point I used to respond to everyone, but now you just there's some you just can't respond to everybody.
Yeah, I'm sure you get a lot. That's I didn't know that you were about to do a Black Coffee too.
Yeah, well, the screenplay is done. We just need to Yeah.
You are on a roll. We have to do another conversation specifically of like helping other independent small time, right? Because you're not small time, but people who are small time trying to do what you're doing. Because you produced Black and Privileged with not much money, and yet it landed on Netflix. And a lot of people think like, I need to have all of this money to produce these films to get to the reach, and it's like, your films people be stealing your films and putting them in Russian.
Bootlegging.
Yeah.
But Black and Privilege was my most bootleg film. And still to this day, like if you go online and you Google Black and Privilege, like you see tons and tons of it's bootleg online, which is a good thing. But
had people in their feelings.
I did have people in their feelings.
Man, that's how you know you're brilliant when you really like. There was no in between. People either really loved it or they hated it. It wasn't. I don't know. It was like, ow.
Yeah. So someone just asked me a question about that. As far as why was I posting all the so-called negative comments that people were talking about Black and Privilege? I was like, that's part.
I love you did that, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I was like, that's it's part of the business. No, you're not gonna always get people who are gonna say positive things, but you just take that negative thing, those so-called negative things, and you just deal with them. Yeah. I was called. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was called a coon, and when I was called a coon, I responded to the person, and we had a dialogue, and it came out. Because one of the things, like, I'm not one of those Black people who's like, I don't care what Black people say. I truly care what we say, because I want us to get it. And when I make my films, I make my films out of a pure love for us, and not trying to make it appear that, okay, you are those Black people. I don't think like that. So so when a Black person says, people have their criticism, and people who have their constructive criticism of the film, I even retweet that, but I don't respond to them. But when you say like, "Oh, this dude is a coon," or "Who wrote this?" then I want to say, "Okay, why do you think it was?"
Yeah, why did that person think you were coon for Black and Privilege?
Because they said I had Black people killing other Black people in the film, but I had to explain to the person.
But that happens, unfortunately.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah, our homicide rates are actually pretty high of us killing each other. Yeah. and it's a conversation that we're typically uncomfortable discussing. Like we're comfortable talking about police brutality against Black people, but also too, that's another conversation where it gets used against us, right? So it's just like you'll have the racist cop, or you'll have like the racist individual that's like, Black people need to be worried about killing each other, not police brutality, and it's
right.
like, so it gets, that's interesting. So how did that conversation end up?
Well, I mean, first of all, the person appreciated the fact that I tweeted them back, and we went back and forth a little bit on it, and then as a matter of fact, somebody else retweeted when I was tweeting. We were going back and forth, and it wasn't mean spirited. It was a very civil conversation. Then somebody tweeted, "You need to go and watch Black Coffee so you can understand the mentality of this director." And then that was just the gist of it, but it was a very civil conversation.
Yeah. Well, when you think about some of like the most popular movies, Black movies that we all enjoy, like Baby Boy, there's a lot of domestic violence in that movie, and like people want a Jody. I'm like,
right. I got covered there, Jody.
I don't want to be with Jody. So it's interesting, or like Boys in the Hood, that we're okay watching those movies and saying that those movies were great, and Tyrese did a really great job in that movie. But then we'd be uncomfortable with your movie and say that was a coon. You're a coon. Yet those movies are celebrated and romanticized. Like there are a lot of Black women that want a Jody, and if when you look at the retweets like that, I'm like, he's crazy.
Yeah.
He gonna beat you up and then have multiple kids on you. I'm good. What is it about it then that if you display, right, the homicides in our community, you might be seen as a coon, but yet these other movies that are definitely classic, like Baby Boy is a classic, Boys in the Hood classics, right? But when we look at those movies, we're not seeing it in the same light that's pretty much what it's Black trauma, it's Black violence. What's the difference, do you think, between your work and their work?
Because when you're talking about most Black violence, and you talk about in those type of movies, right, it's normally thugs killing thugs, so-called thugs killing thugs. So, but in our film, you're looking at people who trying to do something for themselves, trying to protect their community, so they're considered to be the haves, who they consider to be killing off the have-nots, and so I think that was the issue with a lot of people, is the fact that, these people think they're better than other Black people, so now they're killing them off, and so that was the whole issue with. I think that's the issue, with when it comes to Black and privilege.
Huh? That's really interesting psychology. So we're comfortable with thugs killing thugs as long as but we wouldn't be comfortable with like the haves killing the have-nots. Oh,
absolutely. Somebody just tweeted, if you go on Twitter, maybe like 3 or 4 days ago, somebody just tweeted, look at these, like, Black and privilege, about Black and privilege. Look at these coons. These people are nothing but these Black people in this film, referring to the characters, are coons. But if you go on Twitter, is one of the very new tweets that came, so it's very easy to find.
Oh, I'll check that out, because it really is. It's the same thing. Like, take off the haves and the thugs, take off those labels, and if you look at it, it's literally like Black people causing harm to Black people.
Yeah.
It seems like, from what I'm understanding, that we're more comfortable with it being in a certain setting and it looking a certain way. And but why can't a Black thug kill another Black thug also be called a coon? It's not like you're out dismantling white supremacy. Like, that's some real gangster stuff. Go out and dismantle some white supremacy.
So we have to do this again. I have to get on the next one. Okay. So, but I truly appreciate you, but we have to do this again.
Yes, I've enjoyed it. I enjoyed your movie. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And then once this quarantine, we actually have to have like a proper interview where, you know, we got a team to edit.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you so much.
Thank you. I truly appreciate your time. Thank you.
I truly appreciate your time. I love the film. All right, everybody, thanks for tuning in. Be on the lookout for White People Money. That film is hilarious. I enjoyed it. I'd be curious to see what other people's themes that they thought and their feedback on it as well. It's definitely a critical piece to review. So
Thank you.
all right.
All right, thank you.
Talk to you soon.
All right.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.